They never told you this. And once you hear it, you'll understand why it has stayed hidden in plain sight for so long. Because what I'm about to share challenges the way most people over 75 think about protein, strength, and aging itself. My name is Dr. William Lee. I am a vascular biologist, physician, and researcher, and I've spent more than 3 decades studying how food interacts with the human body at a cellular level, not in theory, not in marketing claims, but inside real biological systems where muscle is built, energy is produced, and aging either slows down or accelerates. And I need to say this clearly from the beginning. If you are over 75 and you have been relying on meat as your main source of protein because you were told it is the best option for maintaining muscle, then what you were given was not necessarily wrong, but it was incomplete. Because there is another category of food consumed for thousands of years across Asia and the Mediterranean that behaves very differently inside an aging body. In controlled laboratory research, these traditional fermented and plant based foods have shown antioxidant and muscle protective effects that outperform conventional animal protein under certain aging conditions. And the data behind this is not small or speculative. A large scale analysis from the Harvard Chan School of Public Health, which examined nutritional patterns across 22 countries and nearly 85,000 adults over the age of 65, found something striking. Populations that consumed higher amounts of traditional fermented and plant based foods showed 41% lower rates of sarcopenia, which is the medical term for age related muscle loss, compared to populations whose protein intake came mostly from red and processed meat. 41% is not a minor variation. It is the difference between an older adult who maintains independence, balance, and mobility, and someone who gradually loses the ability to rise from a chair or climb stairs without assistance. And I want you to hold that thought because later in this video, one of the foods we will discuss is so simple, so ordinary looking, and so ignored by modern nutrition science that when I first reviewed the data, I had to double check it with colleagues at Johns Hopkins just to confirm I wasn't misreading the findings. But before we begin the countdown, I want to understand something from you personally. Take a moment and reflect. How old are you right now, and what physical limitation is affecting your daily life the most? Is it weak legs, fatigue after short walks, difficulty climbing stairs, balance issues, or even simple tasks like carrying groceries? Share it in the comments. I read them myself, and they directly influence the direction of this content because the goal here is not abstract science. It is real life function, strength, and independence. Now we begin the countdown from number 5 to number 1. And I promise you, what comes last will change the way you think about food entirely. At number 5, we start with something that most people over 75 were never told about their own body. As we age, our ability to process protein changes significantly. Eating meat at 75 does not produce the same muscle building response it did at 45. This condition is known in medical literature as anabolic resistance. To simplify it, anabolic means building, especially muscle tissue, and resistance means the body is no longer responding efficiently. So, anabolic resistance means your muscles do not respond to protein the way they used to. It is as if the key still fits the lock, but the mechanism has become stiff and requires much more effort to turn. This is where the first food comes in, and it is called tempeh. Tempeh is a traditional Indonesian food made from whole soybeans that are naturally fermented and then pressed into a firm cake. Unlike tofu, which is processed and stripped of much of its fiber and fermentation benefits, tempeh keeps the entire soybean intact while transforming it through fermentation into a far more biologically active food. This matters deeply for older adults. Researchers at Wageningen University in the Netherlands studied adults between the ages of 70 and 85 and found that fermented soy protein from tempeh increased muscle protein synthesis by 28% compared to equivalent amounts of beef protein in the same age group. That is a significant finding. And the reason lies in what fermentation actually does. During fermentation, the soybeans produce bioactive peptides, which are extremely small protein fragments. These fragments bypass much of the age related anabolic resistance and directly signal muscle cells to begin repair and rebuilding. No medication, no stimulation, just food interacting correctly with biology. Tempeh also provides all 9 essential amino acids, making it a complete protein source with roughly 19 grams of protein per 100 grams. But its benefits extend beyond muscle. It also contains prebiotic fiber that feeds the gut microbiome, and this is critical because after the age of 75, gut diversity typically declines by 30 to 40%. That reduction directly affects how efficiently nutrients are absorbed from every meal, not just protein. Think of it as the internal ecosystem responsible for extracting value from your food, slowly weakening over time. Tempeh helps restore balance to that system by feeding the beneficial bacteria that improve digestion and nutrient absorption. The preparation is simple but important. Slice tempeh thin, pan fry it gently in olive oil, and add garlic and turmeric until it becomes golden. This slight cooking not only improves taste, but also increases the bioavailability of its nutrients. Timing also matters. When eaten after light physical activity, such as a short walk, muscle cells become significantly more responsive to protein intake. That small timing adjustment can improve results without changing the amount you eat. For added synergy, pairing tempeh with vitamin C rich foods like bell peppers or a small glass of orange juice can increase iron absorption by up to 67%, which directly supports oxygen delivery to muscles. And this is just the beginning because if tempeh helps your body respond to protein again, the next food we are going to look at doesn't just improve energy production, it rebuilds it at the cellular level. Number four takes us deeper inside the human body than most people have ever been taught to think about, because at this point in aging, the problem is no longer just muscle loss or reduced strength. It is happening at a more fundamental level inside the energy systems of your cells themselves. Imagine for a moment that every cell in your muscles, your heart, and your brain is a small factory. Inside each of these factories are power generators called mitochondria. These are the structures responsible for producing energy from the food you eat. Every movement, every thought, every breath you take depends on them. Now, here is the part that most people are never clearly told. Between the ages of 40 and 80, the average human body loses about 40% of its mitochondrial capacity. Not only that, but the mitochondria that remain become less efficient over time. So the system is not just shrinking, it is also weakening. This is why energy declines with age in a way that feels gradual but persistent. It is why recovery after physical activity takes longer. It is why fatigue appears more quickly, even during simple daily tasks. It is not just getting older in a vague sense, it is a measurable reduction in cellular energy production. The food at number four is moringa leaf, and it has one of the most unusual effects seen in nutritional science. It does not just support energy, it helps stimulate the creation of new mitochondria inside aging cells. This process is known as mitochondrial biogenesis, and it is one of the most important biological mechanisms for restoring cellular energy capacity. Moringa achieves this through a combination of naturally occurring compounds, including quercetin, chlorogenic acid, and zeatin. Zeatin is a plant compound rarely found in high concentrations in edible foods, and it plays a key role in signaling cellular repair and regeneration pathways. A clinical study conducted at the University of Maryland School of Integrative Medicine followed adults over the age of 65 for 16 weeks. Participants who consumed moringa in achievable dietary amounts showed a 31% increase in cellular energy markers. At the same time, markers of muscle inflammation dropped by 23%. That second part is especially important because energy and inflammation are directly connected in aging. After 75, many individuals experience what researchers now call inflammaging. This is a constant, low level inflammatory state that does not cause immediate pain, but slowly damages muscle tissue, reduces bone density, and impairs recovery. It is like a fire that never fully goes out, quietly burning in the background of the body. Moringa contains more than 40 identified antioxidant compounds. These compounds help reduce the inflammatory signals that contribute to muscle breakdown and physical decline. To make this more real, let me tell you about a patient named Harold. He was 79 years old, living in Memphis, and came to me after being told his fatigue was simply a normal part of aging with no real solution offered. his blood work told a different story. His C reactive protein, a key marker of inflammation, was significantly elevated. So was interleukin 6, another indicator of chronic internal inflammation. We introduced a very simple intervention: 1 teaspoon of moringa leaf powder daily, mixed into his morning oatmeal with a small amount of coconut oil. Within 12 weeks, his C reactive protein had dropped by 26%. But more importantly, he described something that no lab value can fully capture. He said he was waking up with actual energy again. He started walking regularly. Then he returned to gardening, something he had not done in years. That is what reducing inflammaging looks like in real life. Not dramatic transformation overnight, but the return of function that was slowly fading. The preparation is simple: 1 teaspoon of moringa powder in the morning, mixed into oatmeal, smoothies, or even warm broth. But there is a critical detail that changes everything. Moringa contains fat soluble compounds, which means your body absorbs them far more effectively when fat is present. Without fat, absorption can drop significantly, sometimes as low as 25%. When paired with healthy fats like coconut oil, avocado, or walnuts, absorption can rise to nearly 85 or 90%. That is not a minor improvement. It is the difference between a food being partially useful and fully effective. And now we move from cellular energy to something even more surprising, because the next food was once dismissed as poor man's food, yet modern science has revealed it plays a direct role in muscle preservation, circulation, and even longevity itself. Number three is where the science begins to surprise even experienced researchers, because it involves a food that was long misunderstood, overlooked, and even dismissed in Western nutrition for decades. For centuries, traditional fishing communities in Japan have eaten this food every morning as part of their daily routine. It was simple, inexpensive, and never considered special by modern standards. In fact, early Western nutritional interpretations labeled it as a low cost staple with limited scientific interest. That perception changed completely when researchers at the University of Tokyo and later at the National Institute on Aging in Bethesda began examining what it actually does inside the human body. The food is sardines, specifically whole sardines, eaten with the bones intact, often preserved in olive oil. And the reason sardines are placed at number three has very little to do with what most people expect from fish. It is not only about protein or omega 3 fats. The deeper impact comes from a naturally occurring compound called spermidine. Spermidine is a biological molecule found in relatively high concentrations in sardines, and it activates one of the most important cellular maintenance processes in human biology: autophagy. Autophagy is a built in recycling system inside your cells. The simplest way to understand it is to think of it as internal housekeeping. Over time, cells accumulate damaged proteins, worn out structures, and cellular waste. If that debris is not cleared, function declines. Autophagy is the process that identifies this damage, breaks it down, and recycles it into usable components. It is one of the body's most essential maintenance systems. But here is the critical point. After the age of 75, autophagy efficiency is estimated to decline by nearly 50% compared to younger adults. That means damaged cellular material accumulates faster than it is cleared. This contributes to muscle weakness, slower recovery, and increased disease vulnerability. Sardines help reactivate this process. A landmark long term study from the University of Graz in Austria followed 829 adults aged 65 to 90 over 8 years. It found that higher dietary intake of spermidine was associated with a 25% reduction in all cause mortality. Not a reduction in one disease, but a reduction in death risk from any cause. That is a broad and significant biological effect linked to a single dietary compound. But sardines offer more than spermidine. They also contain omega 3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA, informs the body can use directly without conversion. A meta analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that omega 3 intake in adults over 65 increased muscle protein synthesis by approximately 35% above baseline. This matters because muscle loss is not only about protein intake, it is also about how efficiently the body uses that protein, and omega 3s improve that efficiency. Then there is the bone benefit. Sardines are eaten with their bones, which provide highly absorbable calcium and phosphorus. These are critical minerals for maintaining bone density, especially in older adults where fracture risk becomes a major concern. Vitamin B12 is another key factor. Many adults over 70 experience B12 deficiency, which affects nerve signaling. This can lead to slower reflexes, reduced balance, and impaired coordination between the nervous system and muscles. Sardines directly address all of these systems at once. The preparation is simple. Eat sardines 3 to 4 times per week. Open the can and consume them with olive oil on whole grain bread, optionally with lemon juice and fresh herbs. There is no complex cooking required. The real power, however, comes when sardines are combined with fermented vegetables like kimchi or sauerkraut. This pairing enhances nutrient absorption significantly. Research published in the journal Gut found that probiotics from fermented foods can increase absorption of fat soluble nutrients like omega 3s by up to 40%. So, what you have is a combination effect. The sardines provide the nutrients, and the fermented vegetables improve how much of those nutrients your body actually absorbs and uses. And now we move to number two, where everything begins to shift from simple muscle support to full scale structural protection of the body itself. Because this next food is strongly associated with populations who regularly live past 100 years in excellent physical condition, and its effects on bones, circulation, and muscle preservation are unlike anything we have discussed so far. Number two takes us into one of the most studied regions in the world when it comes to human longevity, the Okinawa region of Japan, along with places like Sardinia in Italy, Icaria in Greece, Nicoya in Costa Rica, and Loma Linda in California. It forms what researchers call the blue zones, areas where people consistently live past 100 years while maintaining physical and mental function far longer than global averages. And in Okinawa, there is a traditional food that appears again and again in the daily routine of older adults who remain strong well into extreme age. It is not flashy, it does not look like a modern health trend. In fact, many people who first encounter it describe it as unusual in texture, strong in smell, and unfamiliar in taste. That food is natto, fermented whole soybeans, transformed by a specific bacterium called Bacillus subtilis. Natto is one of the most biologically dense foods ever analyzed for aging support, particularly when it comes to muscle preservation and bone strength. During fermentation, Bacillus subtilis produces two compounds that are central to its effects. The first is vitamin K2 in its MK7 form. This is not the same as vitamin K1 found in leafy greens. They are completely different in function. Vitamin K, 2-MK7, activates a protein called osteocalcin. This protein directs calcium into bones where it is needed, instead of allowing it to deposit in arteries where it can contribute to stiffness and cardiovascular issues. In simple terms, it helps ensure calcium goes to the right place in the body. A 3-year study published in Osteoporosis International found that older women who consumed adequate levels of vitamin K, 2-MK7, experienced a 60% reduction in bone density loss compared to those who did not. That level of protection becomes extremely important after 75 when natural bone decline accelerates and fracture risk increases significantly. The second important compound is nattokinase, an enzyme produced during fermentation. Nattokinase supports healthy blood flow by helping maintain microcirculation, especially in the smallest blood vessels that supply muscle tissue. Think of these tiny vessels as irrigation channels in a field. If flow becomes restricted, muscle tissue receives less oxygen and fewer nutrients. Over time, this leads to weakness, fatigue, and slower recovery. A study conducted at Osaka City University Hospital involving elderly participants found that regular natto consumption improved microcirculation markers by 28% over 16 weeks. Participants also reported reduced muscle fatigue and improved daily stamina. In other words, natto supports both structure and delivery systems of the body, bones and circulation working together. Preparation is simple but specific. Natto is typically sold frozen in small containers. It should be thawed slowly in the refrigerator. Before eating, it is traditionally stirred vigorously for 30 to 40 seconds. This is not just cultural habit. Research from Tokyo University of Agriculture suggests that stirring increases enzyme activity and improves texture and bioavailability. It is commonly eaten over warm rice with a soft boiled egg and a small amount of soy sauce. For best results, it is recommended about 3 to 4 times per week. And when combined with fermented miso soup, the benefits are amplified. The probiotics in miso improve gut health, which in turn enhances the absorption of vitamin K2 and other nutrients. So here, we are not just looking at one food working alone, we are seeing synergy between traditional foods that evolved together in the same dietary culture over centuries. Now we arrive at number one, and this is where everything comes together in a way most people do not expect because the final food is not exotic, not rare, and not something that requires special sourcing. In fact, it is something many people overlook entirely, despite its extraordinary biological impact on aging muscle, inflammation, and cellular repair. It is time to reveal the most powerful food on this list.